We'll start in 3 minutes. Meanwhile, look at the beautiful candle and look at the tulips and this week's rose and last week's rose and the name of that darker rose that you can see in the left-hand corner of your screen is Pink Floyd. And this was a gift from the new floral shop that is downstairs at Alba Techniques Studio in Chelsea on the floral block. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And go ahead and shut your eyes for 2 minutes. Hello, I'm Patricia Angelin, and you are at All the Feels with Alba Technique. A couple of things about how I've felt today. I'm going to put this in front of the camera and hope that you can see it. Yes, there it is. It's a wonderful postcard that I picked up in Ireland years ago, and it's of the great playwright Samuel Beckett. And you can see in his face how many feels he's had all of his life. And this is from one of his plays, and all of his plays are particularly concise, particularly terse almost. And here's the quote: "Ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better." And I found this today, and I think I'm going to hang it up in the red room in the studio here, because it sounds on the outside like it's just this kind of nihilistic thing where, it's talking about nothingness. But I don't think it is. It's not talking about nothingness. It's talking about how when you feel just so low because you haven't been able to do what you know you ought to do, and you have failed once again, that is a good thing to keep in front of you. Samuel Beckett: ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. What the specific about this was, it's in my own life, and I have been procrastinating against filing my taxes. And I not only have to file 2020 taxes, but I failed to file 2019 taxes. So I'm trying to get myself, I have a terrible time with numbers. It's a type of dyslexia, and almost everybody's heard of dyslexia at a time where words, when a person's trying to read or trying to write, go upside down and letters mix up and they just kind of don't go like that for the particular mind with dyslexia. Well, I have a similar thing with numbers. It's called dyscalculia. For years and years, I called it dysnumerica. Close enough, different languages. Dyscalculia would be Greek, of course, and the numerica would be Latin for basically, I think, the same thing. So what this has done is it produced a feeling in me of tremendous anxiety in regards to filing my United States and state, New York State, and indeed New York City, taxes. At 1 year, I procrastinated so much. And there were good reasons for this. It wasn't all procrastination. It wasn't all my fault. I mean, there were floods in my New York apartment and records were destroyed. I mean, you get the idea. There were lots of reasons. But the upshot was I still had to file taxes. And I was like 5 years in arrears. So you can imagine the task at hand seemed to be getting more and more and more monumental. And I was less and less able to. And the advice of people who are good at these things, and they go, well, you take one piece of paper at a time or one thing in the pile at a time, and pretty soon you have nothing in your pile. Well, that doesn't work for me. I get even more anxious about that because I pick up the one piece of paper and then I have to read the piece of paper and then I have to remember what's on the piece of paper, and all of this creating more and more anxiety. The good thing, the feeling I can tell you about right now, is that I found somebody to help me. A very excellent actor's taxes gentleman, and he just allayed all of my fears, told me I had not failed. And I said, well, let's get real specific about this. I did fail to do this on time, so you're helping me make my failure right. He said, okay, Pat, whatever, it's just we've got to do it. This is a lot of talk about accountability right now. That's major accountability. So I did it. That's the upshot. However, clearly, the traumas that came into my life because of my inability to file 5 years of taxes, there's some memory of that right now in my body. So I'm having a real tough time, despite the generosity of the state and federal governments in my country, of saying, okay, our usual tax day is April 15th. We're giving you an extension to May 17th because we know that people have been in a pandemic. So I'm grateful to that, but now I've still got to scramble. And that is the bottom line, which leads us into last week's question that I didn't get to do. Oh no, let me segue. Another feeling of joy just before I came. I was given these wonderful flowers. I'm going to show them to you again because they simply are absolutely beautiful. So there we are panning over. And I was given these flowers. And the one in the upper left hand, the darker rose, is called Pink Floyd. And it's already been living for me almost 10 days. But these are new flowers. And that gave me feelings of instantaneous joy. And that was just before I signed on with you. So I had to put them in a vase. And I had to bring them, and I had to arrange them, and I had to make sure that they were in frame, and all of that sort of thing, so that you could have the joy of looking at these flowers with me, and the red wall, and the carpet from Morocco that I got years ago, and the books behind that belonged to my late father, the great books of the Western world. I'm going to breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. Because joy is a stressor on the system as well. So there we are. Yes, Pink Floyd. Yes, I see Jennifer. It's actually the name of the rose. So of course I hear music whenever I see this rose. And I've gotten a lot of joy and a lot of laughter over the past week to 10 days with this particular rose, which is just, it's holding on for me, so that I can enjoy. And the fragrance. The fragrance. A lot of roses these days, the hybrids, they look beautiful, but they don't smell. And I love beautiful smells. So that supports my neurosystem too. That supports my feeling self is beautiful smells. So that was one thing. And then another thing is annoyance, feelings of annoyance. When I first got on to my meeting with my most excellent creative assistant, and I asked her, how she was doing, and she said, well, we're coming back, into retail and the COVID situation, post-COVID, and people are actually coming in, and we normally have 9 people in working, and we have 7 people, and there's a lot of call-ins and a lot of call-outs, and then a woman gets in and she says, I have to leave. And my assistant asked her, now? She said, yeah, my little nephew who has been visiting us was just diagnosed with COVID, so I have to go away, and I have to stay away for 10 days. Now, obviously, this is the right call to make, but it throws her workplace into some upheaval because everybody else now has to scramble to figure out how to do the jobs that she was doing and how to reassign and who can do it and on different times and all of this. So that creates a lot of annoyance. And I think that the feelings surrounding that of just being annoyed because it's just one other thing, has nothing to do with her thinking the woman shouldn't leave. Obviously, she's got to leave. She's also, thanks be to God, not worried about the woman's health because she and everybody else but the child who was diagnosed have been vaccinated. So it's less bad news and less worrisome than it would have been a month or 2 or 3 ago. However, practical world, accountability, it's still an annoyance. So she came in and told me about her feelings of annoyance surrounding her day job. And that is what brings me around full circle to the question that was asked last week that we didn't get to. And that question was, I'm not reading the actual question, but what I wrote down about it. The querent was expressing anger and frustration was the word she used. Frustration about the required pass. And she wrote required in caps. I think this would be on the Facebook page in regards to this last Facebook Live last Wednesday, because she did write the question in the comments. So she wants to know, what do you do about the feelings of frustration in the required pass that about people who are letting things slide? And at first, thank you, Katie. The question, how do you deal with people who are taking advantage of the now required pass you have to give them? It is so hard to constantly let go. Now, the querent for this question, I did go back to the querent and I asked a couple of questions, including a follow-up telephone call, because neither my assistant nor I were sure we understood the question. And what the querent is talking about is accountability. The querent is a teacher in, secondary school, dealing with juniors and seniors mostly. So as a teacher, the concern of this questioner is, I get why people are having problems, like as the baseball people would say, stepping up to the plate, because there's so much anxiety, there's fear, people have been stuck at home, they're figuring out Zoom, the internet goes out, the internet comes on, all of the things that, to state the obvious that we all know about. And so evidently during this grades period, she and fellow teachers at her institution were finding that they were talking to students who were asking for literally a pass grade for either work that they had not done and were finding all kinds of excuses not to do, or didn't do and suddenly knew that they needed to do it right away? And could the teacher give them an extra day, an extra 3 days, a week? Well, the teachers have grades that are due, actually by law in different places, on certain days. And the parents and the students are expecting the teachers to understand. If I hear one more person say to me, I hope you understand, when they're not doing something they ought to do and have just rationalized an excuse for why the individual has not done what the individual not done. There is a bottom line, and especially answering the question to the teachers. It is difficult, and you have had more put on top of you as teachers, I think, arguably than anybody other than our people who are working in aspects of healthcare. Because these are bottom line things that absolutely have to be done. A patient needs what a patient needs when a patient needs it. And it doesn't matter whether, or going into the earlier part of the pandemic, whether you didn't have enough supplies or where do you find a bed, or, the things that we know about the earlier parts of the pandemic, of which we were all so afraid. But now we're gradually coming out of it. But people have been so locked down for so long that we've gotten quite adept. I wonder if it won't be all of us, but most of us, I certainly would accuse myself of this too, of finding excuses about why we haven't been able to do fill in the blank. And add to that the annoyance and the difficulty of high schoolers and young collegiate, but I think this is mostly high schoolers, who are in their adolescence and who have raging hormones, as a friend of mine says, and are just really just as able, if not more so, to rationalize their thinking on something based on their feelings about it. And they don't have enough life experience like the rest of us do to realize that what I would tell myself in those situations is, okay, Pat, like with taxes. Okay, Pat. Yeah. Accountability time, woman. Yes, there are loads of reasons, Pat, why all of your feelings are keeping you from doing what you need to do. But there comes a time when you got to step up to the plate, whether I'm ready to hit that ball coming at me from the pitcher and just swing. Swing that bat, to use a baseball analogy. So, teachers, it's very, very difficult. And I am not sure what to tell you about this, because here you are, the best of you, trying to prepare these young people for going into colleges and for going out into the world and getting jobs. And the fact of the matter is that they are not going to get the pass, because people out in the world are not going to give them a pass. Or they'll do it once, but not twice. And you're explaining to them, or my explaining to them, or the student explaining to them, or the parent explaining to them why the student didn't write what he did. The anecdote given to me as a sidebar here was that one individual on either the telephone or the Zoom or the chat, I'm not sure which, with the particular teacher, said, well, I'm on the beach. On the beach. And, and this was an excuse for why the individual hadn't done the whatever it was, the paper or the test or whatever, and wanted to just have extra time. Now, the teacher by law had to have grades in at a certain time. And so there is a constant problem these days, which I think is going to be ongoing for a while, of an insistence, a requirement, as the questioner said, to give people a pass, and that all the person supposedly has to do is explain why the individual has not stepped up to the plate. But these people are rationalizing, but they're not being accountable. They're not being accountable to themselves or to their own education or to their own teachers. And they are expecting to have a pass by getting an accommodation that they probably don't deserve because they didn't plan their time correctly. Whatever. So I'm going on and on just so that you will understand, because I didn't understand the question. And what can you do about people taking advantage of you? Very little, because many of our teachers, they're not getting the support of the school boards in different parts of the country. They're not getting the supports of their assistant principals and their principals, who just cave whenever a parent gets angry. And it's very, very difficult. So what can I say to you? I've really been thinking about this all week. I think that it goes back to very similar things to what I was talking about with the querent who was dealing with a coworker who may or may not be narcissistic. But certainly we're looking from the outside. So we're not diagnosing people, but we do know what we are having to deal with as individuals. And those parents and children are asking of you as a teacher or a boss in the job that they're asking you to completely excuse them for whatever reason or none that they're giving you as to why they have not met a deadline, and requesting you to do a lot more work or to extend the deadline. And sometimes you do not have that power. But other times you partially have the power, but they shouldn't be asking you to do this because it's not just, it's not right, it's not fair. And furthermore, you as a teacher know that it's not good for the child. It is not good for you to keep giving these passes, whether it's literal, like pass fail, you're going to pass them even though they haven't done the work, because for you as a teacher, you know that this is not going to serve them when they go out into the world. I think it's been a problem that it has been expanding in our educational system here in the United States since I got out of school. So we're talking about 30 years, 35 years, maybe even 40 years in some places of these kind of very bad habits. And a lot of it started out with excellent educational accommodations for people who had dyslexia, for example, getting more time to take tests. If it was known back then that I had dyscalculia, I would probably have been given more time to take a math test. But you know what? It doesn't mean I didn't need to take the math test. Even though I have a problem, I need to take it, and I need to meet certain standards because those are the standards that are going to be needed for me in life to be able to file my taxes and things. So it's a problem, querent. It is a problem. And for your frustration, I would have to say you and your colleagues should discuss your boundaries. So going back to dealing with narcissists, people who are not accountable and who are asking for pass, literally or figuratively, when they haven't done the work and haven't stepped up to the plate, in order for you to be able to do what you need to do, which is keep teaching and not go stark raving mad by everybody asking you and requiring you and having a heightened expectation that you're just going to roll over and do whatever they tell you to do. I don't know what to tell you except for examine your boundaries. There are some things that you know you can't say, that you're going to be longing to say. But you, as a professional who cares about your students, you do get to say no. You get to use the legal and the district deadlines when you speak to these people. You do get to say something like, I do understand. And I am so sorry that you were not able to meet this deadline. I can give you this, or I can give you that accommodation, but you will have to figure out how to do it, because that is the last accommodation that I am empowered to give you within the rules. And furthermore, I need to tell you that although I do so much understand that once you get out into the world, or once you get into college, these kind of accommodations will not be given, and people will not understand. Because in the real world, all of us have certain things we have to do. And it doesn't matter whether we are sick, or whether we are tired, or whether we have had, an illness in the family. We all need to do certain things, and other people are willing to help. And I am willing to help you because I very much care about you. But in order to get your grade for this, the work has to be done. And so far, you have not been able to do the work. So I will allow you to do X, Y instead of doing that. And if you can get that into me by noon tomorrow, then I will be able to meet the deadline for your grade, because no one is going to give me an accommodation on grading you. And I think that is really the only approach that a teacher can take. In a way, you're passing the buck to, this is what the school board requires, this is what the principal and the institution requires, and it is not in my power. And I do think that's a good phrase. It is not in my power to do what you are asking me to do. There isn't enough time. I have obligations myself, not only to the other students, but to the school board. And while I do understand that you're down on a beach in Florida, or, obviously we're not doing that. But, and while I do understand that you've had grave difficulty in finishing the assignment, it does not abrogate the fact, and we do have to deal with the facts within our lives, that the assignment was given. The assignment was given 10 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, or 5 days ago, or whatever it was. And although you do have some circumstances that you feel strongly have prevented you from doing this, the work still has to be done. And I am very sorry, but I do not have the power to bend on this. So speak about how you are disempowered, how you do not have the power, and that you are not angry at the student for not having gotten it done, and that you have done everything in your power to assist the student in getting these things done, but you have to grade the student in X number of hours. And you have other students as well. You're not in a one-on-one tutorial. So give them the facts of the matter, and but preface it by going a nice deep breath in, going, oh my goodness, I am so sorry that this has been so difficult for you to complete. Yes, I know so many things in life get in the way, and particularly now during the pandemic, we've all been having a lot more things getting in the way than we used to have. I do understand. So do something like that and prepare your little spiel, as they say in New York, your story. Maybe write it down so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. You're able to say, when you have this expectation by this person that you just absolutely are going to have to give them a pass no matter what. That you give them the boundaries, that you give them the constraints under which you are working under, not all of them, obviously, but those things to let the student know that you are on their side and are doing willing to do everything that is possible within the constraints that you are given, including having to grade, 50 other people, and that you do not have the time in the day and the night. Even though you're willing to give time, you do not have the time because the grades are due. And there's no wiggle room on when the grades are due for any reason whatsoever. So this is what you do, and it will not alleviate your frustration about the fact that people are asking you for accommodations that are utterly unreasonable. So all I can do for you with that is commiserate with you. There are too many people with expectations that are unreasoning. They're not left brain, they're limbic themselves, but they have a feeling of being absolutely justified. And this is what is annoying you as a teacher, that they have this unjust and unrealistic expectation that no matter what they do, it should get a prize. And what they don't do, you should give them a pass. And since you are not backed up by your administrations frequently, I realize that this is real. So all that you can do as an individual teacher is write down your own boundaries for these things. Let the person know so that it gets on record in a way that the assignment was given on X date. You had all of this time in order to deal with this, and that you so understand that even with a full week, so many things happen, and so many of us aren't getting to the things and aren't planning our time correctly because time is so strange right now, and I understand that. But you are about to go into the real world, and in the real world, people get fired for not showing up more than once or twice. And so I'm not going to be doing you any favors by doing this, even though it seems right now like I would be. So that's when you have to say no. So, no, I am sorry. You cannot have any more time because I don't have any more time to get the grades in. Boundaries, people, boundaries, your personal boundaries to protect your own mental and emotional health. I read today that, I can't look it up because I'm on the phone on this Instagram Live. I think it was 93% of persons, because of the lockdowns and the extremity and the length of lockdowns and partial lockdowns, 93% of our young people are dealing with mental health issues, most broadly defined, 93%. I would say 93 poo. It's probably 100% of us. Even those of us who have been quarantining in what from the outside would look to be perfect situations, like a lot of our celebrities, they're coming on and they're, talking about the difficulties that they've had. And, I'm not saying that people who don't have lots of money and large houses and staff and big, beautiful yards to go out into quarantine in. But I'll tell you, for the rest of us, we look at them when we go, you're saying we're all in this together, but whoa, my quarantine ain't like your quarantine. And that just has to be accepted because it's true. I mean, we talk a good game about equality. It will never be equal, people. So don't let yourself get your knickers in a knot about equality as a word. The best we can do is assist each other in doing the very best we can with our own gifts of mind and of heart and of body, assisting those who don't have as much to give in one realm or another, bearing with the people who are not stepping up to the plate, like my teacher, questioner, and establishing our own boundaries. Take a breath, teacher, before you answer these people so that it doesn't come out angry, even though you are frustrated. That's just going to keep ratcheting up the frustrations and the angers of the other person as well as yours. So pre-plan. That's the final thing. Pre-plan, write it down, get your spiel, get your story so that you can tell them you understand, tell them what you are and are not empowered to do, and speak of it in terms of power and empowered and, laws and regulations and all this sort of thing. And that it is for their sake, even though it doesn't feel like it's for their sake and it feels like you are not being understanding. You are understanding and you want the best for that person. You want the best education. you are willing to, in the next assignment or the next class or whatever, to really assist in every single way that young person to succeed in the next class, but that you are so sorry that the person did not complete the assignment. Because accountability is very, very important. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of people have different definitions of what accountability is, and we all are so into our feelings and what we're feeling and what we're not able to do that we are not being as accountable as we think we are sometimes because of our feelings. And we need to get better and better at our own communication, including with ourselves, with being transparent to ourselves. Again, going back to the taxes, Pat has to be accountable. Pat has to file Pat's taxes. There's been loads of emotional stuff in my life keeping me from filing my blessed taxes. But like death and taxes, I gotta file them. And my emotional feelings and stuff giving me so much trouble with doing this for what is for me a very, very, very difficult task. Even if I got another extension, the federal and state governments have given me one. I don't have to have them in. What is our date right now? Is it like the 14th? Yeah, it's the 14th. In normal years, the 15th, tomorrow would be my deadline, and I'd have to be scrambling to get them in by midnight. As of now, they've given us an extra month. But you can't always do that as a teacher. So that's what you have to say. As Rosette Epstein says here, accountability, transparency, communication, explanation, real and respectful. As a final thing, you do have to be aware that if people are in enough heightened emotion, and if they're angry and they're frightened and they're sufficiently afraid, they're not going to be able to hear you. No matter how reasonable you're being, no matter how kind you are being, they are not necessarily going to be able to hear you. So teacher, what you write down for yourself, your spiel, keep going back to it and back to it. Look at it written out for yourself. Your outline. Get your story together of how you're going to deal with these people who come up with excuse against excuse against excuse, including, but I'm on a beach and I don't have Wi-Fi. That's why God created the internet cafes, kid. You know perfectly well that you can go up the beach and you can get into a Wi-Fi. I mean, there basically is no excuse anymore. And yet, to the person's feeling that, in the fear and in the lack of accountability, even saying to them, you have to be accountable, it can be a trigger word for a lot of people. So get your spiel together so that you can communicate with clarity and kindness about what you are and are not empowered to do, teacher. So that you're not getting railroaded in your own emotional life by, the puppeta about what people are requiring you to do to give them a pass. Thank you so much for joining us for All the Feels. Ask any questions, ask for any clarifications, and I will give them to you next week on Facebook Live at the same time, 5 o'clock Eastern time for a half hour. And or the following week, if you don't do Facebook, I'll be back on Instagram again and try to do my best to field whatever questions that you have. I'm going to turn the camera around. Everyone take a nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And look at these beautiful, beautiful flowers. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 2 more, in through the nose, out through the mouth. 1 more, in through the nose. Breathe in the smell of flowers wherever you can find them, even if they're imaginary flowers you find in your own mind. Bless you all, and I'll see you next week.